Hi, this is Kelly Borsheim. I am going to share with you the start of my project here. I've been asked to restore this plaster medallion, I guess you call it, from World War I. You can see the dates here from the World War I, and this is a soldier. You can see it's made from plaster, and then it's been painted on the top with this patina. The other day I took my finger and just sort of lightly brushed over the parts where the color is going off, because if it flakes off easy, then it needs to go away, because there's no point in me painting over it, because it's just like painting your house. If you have stuff underneath that's going to fall off, then it's going to fall off with the new stuff on top of it. So I don't want to destroy all of this. I want to leave as much original as possible, obviously. Maybe it's not obvious, but it's obvious to me. Anyway, I'm going to start with the back. Now what I've done here is I've attached a piece of wood, and I covered it with plastic because I use this wood and its twin, because I use everything, I save everything. But I use this a lot of times to put on the table and balance like a painting or something if I want to paint the edges and stuff like that. So I have a lot of different pieces of wood at the same level that I used to do that. So anyway, I decided to block this because I don't know how well this will show up. But there's a metal hook that was inserted into the plaster here. It probably only goes about this far, because you can see that the gesso goes in right here, and that's following the shape of this. So it keeps the thickness here, so it's strong, but by not having this totally flat on the back, it keeps this lighter, because this was mounted on a wall pretty high up in a two-story building. There's a little balcony where people can look over and a little bit down at this, but it's over a marble thing that I also have to restore that and repaint all the letters and stuff that are carved into the marble. But anyway, that's a different video. But anyway, there's a slight slight crack in the plaster here, so I'm going to go over that, but I wanted to show you the materials I'm going to use. Right now you can see how I've clamped to the top this to the metal, because I'm going to fill in this with gesso, with plaster. Anyway, while I was giving this some tooth, this little piece wanted to come out. I decided to leave it there and let the plaster go in and around behind it, and I'm going to put a cloth over the front of this, this piece here in fact. So this is one of my materials. I'm out of order, but that's okay. Once I lay in the plaster here, I'm going to cover this with this thing, and it's going long enough down the length of the metal because I want it to add to the plaster that exists. And the crack here, I'm going to do the same thing. Actually, the crack is here, I can see it. So anyway, getting back to this, to add the plaster to this, I put this here because when I have this laying flat on the table, I don't want the plaster that I add to go into the front of the piece, so I want to block this a little bit. And I decided not to use tape, because tape is going to pull away any of the color that might have otherwise stayed. So I don't want to do that, because to really tape it to keep the liquid from going, you'd have to do it. So these, when you buy alio, when you buy garlic, they come in these little plastic things. Obviously I'm not going to use the red, but I've decided that this is a netting. It's a similar idea for this, but these have the holes too big to be pushing into there and getting much control. So I'm hoping that this netting here is the same idea, and I can sort of squish it in there, and the plaster will go through it, but also give this a little more strength. So it's a theory. I'm going to try out. Gloves. Now, before you add new plaster to old plaster, you need to give it what we call tooth. What that means is I want a surface that's really, really rough, so that the new gesso, the new plaster, is going to sink into those holes and grab on to the old plaster so that they stay one piece together. So that's what I'm hoping to add on here. But you see, I don't know for a fact how far down this little piece of metal that was inserted to give this a way to hook on to the wall. There's a hook on the wall, but it probably goes to about here, because then you see the plaster gets thin. They may have dipped it in, but probably not, because that would have been created. This was this was done in the traditional way that you make an original out of clay or some other material, however the sculptor wanted. You make a bas-relief, and then you make a rubber mold on top of that with maybe a plaster outer or fiberglass. But this being done after World War I, it probably was a gesso mold to support the flexible rubber mold so that you don't distort the features when you pour in stuff to it. But anyway, this was probably made from a mold with all the lettering in backwards kind of thing. And then this was poured in. Now here you can see there's some, oops, that wasn't good. There's some sand. It looks like sand anyway. The texture is very rough, like a coarse sand. But then this color here, the orange that's here, seems like a much finer sand, or maybe it's even ceramic, but I doubt it because you wouldn't have fired it. It's probably a sand mixed with some sort of adhesive. And they probably started off with that because you'll see it's on the deeper parts, because when you're pouring into the mold, it's the stuff near the surface that's going to be touching the mold. And then after you fill it in with the plaster and behind it, you see the orange is coming here. I don't know why that happened, but it just is my theory about what happened. But they may have started with this on the deeper parts and then realized it's not going to look all that well on the surface. So anyway, that's my thought. But the rest of it is obviously white plaster all the way through. So coming on the back. Now, I also need to repair the sides here and make them all flat again and make it a pretty edge. But I want to do that when the piece is face up, because I don't want anything that I do to fall on the front of it. So I'm just going to do the minimum thing I need to do here. And because the helmet is here and the brain, you know, is fatter there, the piece actually goes up this way a little bit. And that's helpful to me because that means gravity may help me. And maybe I can even put something underneath here to give me a little bit more tip. I don't want to exaggerate a little bit. Anyway, so I had this, my rasp that I use for marble. I have very gross carbide tips here and then much finer. So I've used this to scratch into this, some bigger scratches. Now on the front and the sides, when I need to do the same idea with the tooth, I'm going to use the finer tools or even my diamond file that I have here. I want something very fine because I don't want to destroy the front of the artwork. But here you can see everything's really gross. But it's nice when you have these natural little holes that are left there. And you can see they also used canvas to strengthen this because it's coming through. It looks like sort of a burlap color. Okay. Now, I still can't lift a lot of heavy things for very long. You can see I rested this on the table. I didn't actually physically lift it, but it's not as heavy as maybe it would seem to be. But this is alabaster gesso, plaster, gypsum, and I couldn't move the bag, so I just scooped out some. This is my source material here. And I put it into this bowl. These are little bowls that I just bought, soup, you know, pre-made soup from the grocery store. So this is what I'm going to mix in. Some time ago, I went and I bought some cheap forks, like 6 of them for $1, yeah, euro, but whatever. And I just want to mix up the plaster using this kind of stuff. I'll add tepid water, not hot, but better, maybe not cold either. So this I had for cleaning off extra stuff. You can still see it's a little bit of dusty kind of thing. After I did, I also put tooth all the way around these edges because I want to fill in the holes that are on the back side here. And I'll do that as the plaster starts to set up more and gets a little harder. I don't enjoy working with plaster, honestly, because I don't have flexible bowls that we find in the United States. I haven't found them here, but to be honest, it wasn't something I've looked for a lot. But some time ago, I was making a plaster mold of a bas-relief sculpture I did. And anyway, plastic gloves to protect myself. I've removed my ring and other things like that. I don't want to have any jewelry marking things. I ate lunch because I don't want distractions. I've gone to the bathroom. I've done everything I could possibly think that will be a distraction, because once I start this, I can't afford to go, oh, I need to go do something, because, you know, time's an essence. So, but I wanted to show you my other tools. Okay, obviously I had this because there are some places where I need to get off old plaster and put my netting. That's going to be close at hand, because again, once I put on the gloves and I start doing this work, I need to remember where that crap. But I have light coming in through my front door. I want this to be closer. I'll use this before I use the big one. I'm not going to use the red or the white here. So I've already pre-cut a lot of my pieces. I have extra of these, but I probably won't need to use them because it's such a small space. I was going to use tape to block this off originally, but as I said, the tape may pull away some of the original stuff, and I don't want that. And with tape, you have to be very careful because if you really don't have it stuck on very well, the weight of the plaster and also the liquidness of the plaster is going to ooze through any little separation it can. So I have my regular hand sculpting tools, things that I feel comfortable using. This has a straight edge, which is very, very helpful. And this is a broken palette knife, but I waste nothing, and I can still use this. I like the straight edge that's here. So, what else do I need to show you? This netting here comes in big sheets like this. I've cut these up for my other project, but I'll cut them up into smaller pieces just like I do when I'm making fiberglass molds. So I've got my 2 gloves out, but I'm going to leave a couple extra in because a lot of times these break, and I want to be able to not have to put plaster into the box to get more. So again, I try to have everything. I've got clean water here in case I have an emergency cleanup with a sponge. It's an old yucky sponge. It's not one I clean my dishes with and then go back to cleaning dishes. So, okay, I think I'm going to get started now, and we'll see you in a bit. Okay, ciao, ciao. I want to remember where this crack is, because I want to anticipate any time I might have confusion or forget something or whatever. It's a way to signal me, and sometimes I've already lost that. I know it's in line with this thing, but anyway, so I try to anticipate any problem that I could possibly have with things. So now, I don't know if I'm going to need my glasses for this. I think probably not, but I want them near, but maybe I don't actually want them on top of this. Hi, this is Kelly Borsheim. Please subscribe to my channel, and if you like this content, go ahead and put a like on it, and it will help my life, obviously, but it will help show this to other people that might be interested, and even if that doesn't float your boat, I would appreciate your comments or your questions, or have you tried this before yourself, or you know how that works. So thank you for your support. It means a lot to me, and it helps me continue to do stuff like this. Now, it's too liquidy milky here, so I know I probably added too much water, but that's why I had more in the supply here. However, I don't want to be mixing up too much plaster, because my experience is that this stuff sets up quite easily. Now, you know, when you put it in, it's kind of gunky like this. So that's why I like the fork, because I have all these different prongs that I can use to mix it up. I mean, I guess it's like making bread, really. So now I can see it's still too runny. I wish I wouldn't have added that much water, because I don't think that's going to take a lot. Maybe this won't either. I don't generally enjoy working with plaster because it sets up very quickly, and I'm not known for my speed, to be honest. But also, I mentioned the flexible bowls that we used to use at the Sculpture Center back in Austin, Texas. And they're amazing, because the problem with gesso, for me at least, is you spend so much time cleaning out the bowl. Because if it is once it starts setting up and you leave something left over in the bowl, the next time you pour in the plaster and water, it starts setting up even faster. And that's really, really, really frustrating if you don't work fast, which is me. But I don't know how, I mean, I can see pouring it into a mold, you kind of want everything to go fast, because you don't want to spend all day waiting for it to get like that. But anyway, I just don't, I felt like I spent more time cleaning out bowls than I did actually doing any kind of sculpture stuff. But also, I wasn't using it for mold making at the Sculpture Center. I was learning plaster sculpture, building the armature out of metal and that kind of thing, and then putting it on. And I just didn't feel it was as satisfying as carving marble and even working with wax to make bronze. Now here, I think this might be a good kind of thing to use because it's not dripping off right away, but it's still fairly soft and malleable because I do want parts of it to go into the cracks there and stuff like that. Okay, while I have clean hands still. Alright, so I wanted to use, maybe this is too much of a good thing, maybe this is enough to be putting into here. And I'm going to fold it over on this edge that goes out here because I don't want any of the little strings to be kicking out. Okay, I'm just going to kind of shove that in there. And I don't know, wait a minute. You know what I should do before I start is I should probably change the position of one of these cameras. So let's change this one. Okay, I'm going to have to take out the plugs for the light. So let's change this. Do you see how much fun it is to work by myself? But I want to, let's get this going here. Oops, I don't want that to be. I don't like the sound of that breaking. I didn't want to move this forward because sometimes the weight of it, it's just a cheap little stand, but it means that a lot of times you don't get what you need. Alright, so I'm going to try to make this stable, but you know what, I just realized this isn't a place where I want to work. I don't want my body to cover this up. Wait a minute, I'm going to close this video and get myself set up. Well, at least the good thing about unplugging the lights is it's not going in your face now. Alright, so I've made my plaster. It's already starting to get solid. I've filled this up a little bit. And I'm going to try to push this down. Wow, it's more solid than I had wanted for this, but try to push that down into the crack that was there on that piece that I told you is starting to come off. Get it off the fork. And you see, now when gesso starts to have that chemical reaction to set it up to be hard, what happens is the temperature, you can feel it getting hot. If you've ever broken a limb, as I have, you feel when they put the gesso on your arm that it gets warm. It's not a scary kind of warm. Now here I want to remove this from touching where's the word for it? Good grief. This thing, the clamp. I don't want this to touch the clamp because once it's hard plaster, then I'm going to have to sort of carve it off of the clamp. And why do I want to make more work for myself? I don't. That's not my thing. Alright. So, but I do want to fill in these places here. Now, any little piece of plaster that comes off is not going to be a problem because it'll pretty much just snap off when I go to clean it up. But I do want to try to minimize the cleanup work that I have to do because, you know, only so much time in a day, and good grief. I wanted to do other projects this month. Well, finished projects of my own. Let's get that in there. Okay. Alright, so now what I want to do you notice how hard it's getting already. But, you know, if this thing ever were to fall out, then of course the whole bas-relief is going to fall off the wall, so that's not good. It's already kind of starting to sit up a little bit. I don't feel the heat of it though. It doesn't feel hot to me. Okay, now I want to put this on. I want to put it on long ways. And as I mentioned in the other video, I don't mind if the plaster sticks out from the wall more because maybe I'm making this too fat, I don't know. Because most people are below this and they're looking up at it. So if the top can actually look down upon them, that's going to be fine because they'll see the face a little bit better. Get this out of here. And then once I've done this, I'm probably going to let this sit overnight and make sure that it's as good as I can, you know, get it. I may sand it down or something before I flip it over, but I want to finish this back before I start to tackle the really nerve-wracking part to me. Nerve-wracking because I'm afraid to screw up. It doesn't matter to me how often, and I haven't done a lot of restorations, but how often I do anything, even in my own work, I always get nervous that I'm just not going to live up to my expectations. And to be honest, sometimes I do live up to my expectations, but other times I'm such a critic of myself that I feel like, man, the thing that I vaguely saw in my head as the dream doesn't seem to be how it ended up turning out. Now here, I want to put some water into this gesso here. Oh, don't call me. I guess that probably knocked out the video, didn't it? It's a number I don't know. So you stop my video. I don't have a clean... Okay. At least it didn't keep ringing forever. I don't know if you have the habit, but I don't respond to numbers that I don't have in my contacts because it's usually telemarketers. So I wasn't trying to be rude, but also let's be fair. If I'm in the middle of doing plaster stuff, the last thing I want to do is talk to anybody. And if it's a real emergency, they'll contact me again. Okay, so this was a preventative to make sure that that crack doesn't become worse. Now what I'm trying to do is really clean up all of this stuff that's in the bucket as much as possible. Because if it's still wet to some degree, it's going to be a lot easier to clean up later. Okay, so the cloth is underneath that to reinforce that, and here where I see some cloth sticking up here, I might do that, but since I didn't scratch the whole back of that, it might be a moot point, you know. Okay. I don't think that I gave this tooth far out enough. Where did that tool go? I think I scratched it far enough away. I didn't anticipate how I was going to do this really. So I don't know that this is going to stay here. But, you know, like I said, when it's dry, it will be easier to, well, maybe not easier, it's easier to smooth it out while it's still malleable. It's a little bit warm, but it's not like what I was expecting. I think that's too old to use now. So I'm going to put the rest of this water in here to keep this, hopefully, from being too difficult to clean. I don't really want this setting up either. I don't know that this is the right way to do this because it could be this gesso is going to set up and put into my carbide tip plus water, but because I don't know what I'm doing, I just know I don't want it to stay that way. I just want to do that to give me a second and then rinse it out. But if it's way too much water, then the plaster is not going to set up. And as far as the thing rusting, I think I need to see also here, it's going to have to clean off all these tools. Plaster is just not my favorite. Because anybody that knows me will tell you that cleaning is something I do only when it's necessary for my brain to feel like it can work. Okay, so what I'm doing is sort of cleaning up this edge and making it as straight as I can across the top there. I hope that's going to work. I mean, it's not going to push any more into that because it's solid, but I hope I did a good job at the beginning of the pushing of that. And this is okay. And so for right now, I'm going to spend time trying to clean this up. And never, ever, ever put your plaster water down into the drain. What I like to do is sort of put a big paper towel or something larger and pour onto that and let the water absorb into the stuff and whatever, and then I can throw away these contacts in the proper place to be putting stuff like that. So, but probably what I'm going to do is clean this up, go put some more powder into my supply box, and then and clean up. I can do that, but first I want to clean up this. Now, what I may do with that is to get an old toothbrush or something. Actually, I have one here near my sink. Put that here so it'll be in this video. I'm going to get all that stuff out of that carbide tip tool. This stuff may crumble away and stuff as I'm cleaning marble, but I don't want to risk losing, because this is my absolute favorite tool for polishing my stone carvings. I love it. I have looked for where I bought it from and I don't know where it is and I can't find it online. I've tried to do an image search on it, even reverse, Google search kind of thing, and that didn't work. So anyway, I think in the end what I'm going to do is let this, I've done what I can to clean this up. I'll let it sit out in the sun and then maybe take a piece of marble or something and just scratch on it until I get back my stuff, because I hope it doesn't fill this in forever. That would kind of bite. But I did need to give tooth, and I may need to go around with the edges again, because I'm realizing that when I put in the plaster, I put in more. It went out further than I anticipated. I don't remember if I scratched this up because I did that either last night or this morning. I tried to do a lot of prep work because I work with the sun as much as possible, and I also find that I need to change activities every once in a while, but when I'm here, I'm here. But there does also become a point in which I need to do things. So for right now, I'm going to go clean up, get started again, and then I'm going to start working on some of these edges. Although, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Thanks. Get this off to turn off the videos. Okay, so let's go with round 2. I decided to put in my work spoon into the material here, the gesso, the plaster, so that I don't make mistakes. Later if I need to add a little more powder, I can sort of control what I'm doing here, because I want to work with less material but also not put so much. I want to have this more liquidy there. But anyway, I'm going to move this because I didn't earn my nickname Grace Kelly out of malice. It's deserved. So I don't want to tip this over. I've put a little bit of stuff in here that I want to work with this time. So I'm going to try to put this a little bit distance on my kitchen counter. And, okay, so the same thing with the water. I wanted to control a little bit better out of this bowl, but I'm going to keep this bowl of clean water here in case I need to dump something in real quick and whatever. So here, well, let me put my, I did feel this get hot a little bit. It's cooled now again. And I was wondering if last time I was making plaster molds, if I had covered a little bit with a damp cloth. I don't remember if I did or not, but I thought I'd put it there in case I changed my mind. So now what I want to do is take my diamond little riffler, or well, that's not really a riffler, but little sander. And I want to make sure again that I give tooth to the part on the sides here. Now a lot of this stuff where it's ruined, you don't see so much from this direction, but from here you see this is that sand stuff. So there's a lot of holes and a lot of, it's not at all flat or smooth, cliche. So anyway, and knowing now that I'm going to put in more plaster as I go along here, give a little bit of more scratch to this. Again, I don't want to try to cover up too much of this color, but if it's necessary to put in some of the parts where it's missing, because it's got such an uneven edge and I'd like it to be pretty against the wall. Okay, again, I did this last night, but I just wanted to make sure that I did the sides. Because, you know, the thing is, it would pretty much not be a fun thing if I did all that stuff and then it comes flaking off because I just didn't do something right. And it may still do that, I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell. This is wet. So another reason this is, I want to let this stay overnight. And what I was going to say is about cleaning up this bowl here. I like to add a bunch more water in it, and it kind of keeps the gesso from setting up to becoming hard pieces because it's got, the formula is not proper for the chemical reaction. But I let the bowl sit a while because gesso or plaster is heavier, and so after a while it all goes down, and then I can pour the water off. Usually I go to a space in the garden where there's some weeds that I don't want to live, and I can pour this water off of there, and then what's left in the bowl I can scoop out and put it into, I usually use these plastic tubs that the vegetables come in. Just a way to capture that without actually you know, so I don't have to throw it into the garden, obviously. I don't want to do that. So you can see this is too liquidy here. Am I actually video? Yeah, it's going. Am I showing you? Yeah, okay. So I don't want it to be this liquidy of milk. I don't want to drink it. So that means, again, I added too much water. So let me go back to my source. And one of those plastic pieces I put on the floor, I always say plastic bags and everything, because again, I told you I reuse everything. I keep slipping on it for whatever reason. I have it tacked underneath the table leg, but it still wants to swirl. Let's put that a little bit distance from me. I was a little worried if I left this on the table, because at some point I think I may be rotating on the table, but it might not. It's still a little bit too liquidy, so I need to really be careful with not adding too much water, because even when I think I'm being conservative, I apparently wasn't. So what I don't want to do is the opposite now, have it be too set up like it did last time, where it was like, oh, all of a sudden that caught me unaware. But if it's too liquidy here, it's going to drip, and I definitely do not want it to drip, because I thought I was going to do this the sides when I had it flipped, but there's stuff on the back here that needs to be fixed, so it makes sense to do it this way. Okay. Still too liquidy. It doesn't come off the fork that much, but that's because there's nothing to really come off the fork. So let's see if I can do this well. Still have a lot on this fork here. Let's get that off of there. And I read on the internet before I started this project, because it's been a long time since I worked with plaster, you know, I was reading up on how to do the various things on this stuff, and one thing said, AI told me, you can use rice flour to mix with the plaster to make it stronger. The thing is, AI is really just a faster search engine kind of thing, at least the way I understand it. And what that means is that if somebody wrote on their blog something stupid or intentionally incorrect or just dumb, or not correct at all, so I'm putting that in the water, then AI might decide, well, that's a response to your question, so let me show you that response. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that response is going to be accurate. So, okay, so I don't know. I'm going to put this first like this, and then scrape it like that, because I want it to fill in that hole on the edge. It's this edge here that I want to fill, so I'm going to scrape this off this way and then pull that way. And just like in a painting, you want your strokes to emphasize the directions that you're wanting the shape to be, kind of thing. So I'm going to use this edge to define this edge, if that makes any sense. Okay, so it's thin enough that it's going into these holes here. And then I need to remember to take my finger along, catch any drippies. Drippy sounds so official, doesn't it? I'm going to try to build that corner up. I'm not so worried about, you see this bottom edge here, I'm not as worried about that just yet, because I can get it from the front and let it drip toward the back. But if I can get it now, obviously that would be efficient. So, but it's not going to be my primary objective. My primary objective is to work on the stuff I can actually see. Let's scoop this up and use all of it that I can. Why waste it? Now the reason I'm using a putty knife is because it has a straight edge. And that way with a straight edge I can get a straight line, and that kind of makes, you know, your whole life easier. But you'll see I'm using the face of it to do stuff like that, because it's kind of like when you're doing lettering with a paintbrush. You want to use a paintbrush where the bristles are super long, because as you drag it along the line, you tend to figure out all your weaving, your curviness that your hand is putting into it. I mean, maybe some people have a steady hand, but I don't think I'm one of them. I wouldn't do brain surgery for that reason, and many others. But anyway, it's ironic that it's not really ironic I chose to do this. When I was asked to join the Misericordia once I got my driver's license here in Italy, Misericordia is a group of mostly volunteers. They do pay young kids for the first 2 years of service because they want kids to have experience to get a paying job so that they can use that to launch themselves into other work if they want it. Otherwise, they can also keep volunteering for the Misericordia. We take a basic course in CPR and general how to help people and how to move people while they're sitting in a wheelchair or in the gurney or, you know, something like that. I used to be the volunteer that would sit in the back of the ambulance with the other patients. Usually there are old people that we're taking home from the hospital or taking to doctor appointments or something like that. But after my accident, I can't lift heavy things anymore. So if a patient starts to fall, I may not have the strength to actually help them, and if I do, I may do damage to myself. So now I just drive a car for people who can walk when they have to go to their medical appointments and their family can't take them, or if a person needs to go shopping, and again, if their family can't take them, that kind of thing. Now they pay for that service because they decided, I guess the Misericordia decided that if somebody can walk, then they have maybe a few more options because family members don't need special help assisting a person who can't walk. And that way they figure we're going to minimize how much because we're having a problem finding enough people to volunteer to do services like that. Volunteer service in general, possibly, but also for medical. In fact, I have had a problem with doctors since I was a teenager. At least my first memory was when I was 13, when I had a out-of-body experience with being so angry at feeling manipulated. And anyway, that's here nor there, but my point is that medical stuff is not something I ever sought out and never wanted to do. But when Paolo Mattiucci of the Misericordia of Castelvecchio asked me would I want to join, my first response is medical? No, I don't want to deal with, no, I can't do that. But then another part of me thought, well, first of all, I like to be of service. I enjoy helping people. And this would be a way for me to learn more Italian, but also because I work at home and spend a lot of my time alone and need to and like to, that this was an opportunity for me to do those things. But also, with the Misericordia, we were taking an ambulance, sometimes an hour away, not just to Pisa and Florence, but Cutigliano and many other places. And so I thought, well, it might be an interesting way for me to learn a little bit more about Tuscany. And also, curiously, oddly enough, this was an inspiration for me, was to see the inside of houses. Because when I was a little girl, and I think maybe even an older girl, my father used to take me to real estate stuff, and it was one of the fun things to do was go look at these homes for sale. Some of them were like in Cat Mountain in Austin, Texas, and there was no way he was going to afford one of those. Certainly I wasn't as a student either. But to just look at them, and I love seeing how people not only design and build houses, and sometimes in Florence especially, you see these palazzos, and they later get divided up by the generations of people that want to turn them into little apartments so they can make money, or just even have multifamily dwellings instead of one huge rich family that may or may not exist anymore. And I just like seeing how they divide up the spaces and how they use them, and then, you know, it's just amazing to me. And every house is so completely different because the lives inside are different. And so there were several reasons that I thought maybe I could just tackle my fear of the medical world by entering it as a person who's helping somebody else with a problem and not me having the problem, because eventually my time will come, and it has come, even if I try to pretend it hasn't. So anyway, that was that. And I forgot why I got onto that about the Misericordia, but that actually helped me get to know more citizens in the place where I live, and it's enhanced my life. So I think volunteering is a really, really great thing. Now, it's not purely voluntary, because they do give us 3 dinners or lunches every year as a thank you. And if you don't go to the Christmas dinner, then they will have somebody bring a box full of food and different things in there for you, because they want you to have something even if you couldn't make the dinner. But anyway, these are little perks, but it's also a perk of camaraderie, and I get to, like I said, I get to know people, I get to travel around Italy, and even though it's not like a vacation travel, it's learning the roads a little bit better, understanding more about that. But at least here up in the mountains where I live now, what happens is I get to help my neighbors, so I get to know them better, because when we're in the car, a lot of times we talk. But if you take somebody grocery shopping, you also learn more about their taste and their lives, and hear about their cats or whatever, hear about things that they want to do for their grandchildren, or, you know, whatever, that kind of thing. So anyway, I'm rambling. but I am still working. Normally when I work, I like to listen to audiobooks or podcasts, that kind of thing. And I find that helps me. If I listen to music, that's a good thing too, but I tend to like stories a little bit more. It started out with, I thought I would write a book. I wanted to write murder mystery kind of thing with me as the victim, I think. Because when I was trying to do dating and stuff like that, it was just like... I'll tell you a stupid thing. I've made a couple of guys laugh because before I decided whether I was going to go out with them or not, I would say, "Are you a serial killer?" And they go, "What? No, I'm not a serial killer. Why would you ask me that?" And I thought, because I have it in my head that a serial killer would get a kick out of telling his victim, yes, I am a serial killer, and being honest with her. And then when he offs her, right before it happens or something, he can say, "I told you, and you still wanted it." So, I don't know. I just figure a real serial killer wouldn't lie to you. Which, I don't know if I'd bank my life on my silly logic, but it was kind of, I mean, it wasn't like I was meeting a lot of serial killers that I know of in my life, but it was, I don't know. Sometimes the dating stuff is so hard because I got a lot of this stuff of men going, "Oh, happy Wednesday, good night, good morning," and I had no idea what to respond to that. I mean, these are people I don't know from Adam, and they're not asking me questions, anything about me, or telling me anything about their lives. They're just doing this, "Oh, good morning," and I thought, and at some point, because for me, sadly, I often think that it's rude to not respond to somebody when they're obviously sending you a message, directly speaking to you, or speaking to you in person, and I always felt like that was rude. But now I'm starting to understand that maybe it's not rude to ask someone to up their ante, you know what I mean? I mean, in this case, if you go on a dating site, doesn't that mean that you're interested in meeting people? And if you're interested in meeting people, I totally understand being shy, but I don't understand what you think you're going to gain from saying happy Wednesday, happy Monday, happy Friday, good night, sweet dreams, good morning. You know, I mean, I don't know. I just don't see what a person is supposed to say, "Oh yeah, that's totally engrossing and I want to spend my time chatting with somebody who has nothing to say." Because, sad to say it, but that's kind of what that is, isn't it? Okay, now you can see this is getting too hard. It's not really going to work, and it probably won't really stick. So that means that I've wasted all of this here. So there's no point. I don't really want to add weight, just add weight. So there's no point in me doing anything. So that means I want to scrape as much of this out as I can. And I can set it here for now because it's certainly not going to stick to anything. And get out all of this if possible. And this is what I don't like, is the waist. Now maybe I could pull that in and sculpt it into a little frog or something, but you know, at some point, is that really worth the energy? Because if I start sculpting a frog out of that, I'm going to want to make him look pretty, not just a little lump with a little head and eyes, you know. Even that, it's not the work I want to be doing right now, so. Now, let's get some of this water. Pour this into here. This is still relatively clean, which is nice. I'll go wash out the little bit of left in there. And keep going. So, yeah, I'm gonna scrape off as much as I can on this. let it sit so that the water will soften all of this stuff and then settle out. And then I can go clean this out and let it sit and start all over again. And in the meantime, I'm going to turn this because it's far easier for me to sit right here and look at this at eye level. But I'm also going to let it, once it's a little bit dry, I can go along with this and sort of trim off this bottom edge here, because it's going to be fairly thin and it's still going to be fragile because it's a little bit warm. I mean, it's a little bit new. Okay. Thank you for watching, and put like and respond and share and subscribe and all that good stuff. Ciao, ciao.